Hey everyone, welcome back to Beyond the Fear. I'm your host Zishan, and tonight we have a chilling tale that will keep you up at night. Get ready to dive into the eerie story of the ghost in the woods, where a group of campers discover that the serene forest they thought was their perfect getaway is actually haunted by a terrifying presence. As the darkness closes in around them, the voice of a ghost begins calling their names, luring them deeper into the nightmare. Will they escape, or will the forest claim them as its own? Stay tuned as we unravel this spine-tingling mystery together. Let's get in. It was late afternoon when a group of 5 friends, Jake, Sarah, Lisa, Michael, and Danny, pulled their car into the remote, densely wooded campsite. They had heard stories about Whispering Pines Forest before. Rumors of strange noises and shadows moving through the trees had reached them, but they dismissed it as campfire tales designed to scare tourists. Excited for a weekend away from the hustle and bustle of the city, the group laughed off the warnings, confident that their adventure would be nothing more than fun under the stars. The sky above was a crisp blue, the sun slowly beginning its descent. The golden light filtered through the towering pines, casting long, eerie shadows on the ground. The air smelled fresh, but there was a dampness to it, a weight that clung to their skin as they stepped out of the car. "Man, this place is amazing," Jake exclaimed, stretching his arms wide as he took in the surroundings. Perfect spot to disconnect from the world. As they unpacked their tents, Sarah noticed something odd, a peculiar stillness in the air. There were no birds chirping, no insects buzzing, just the faint sound of the wind rustling through the treetops. She brushed it off, attributing it to her nerves. After all, they were deep in the wilderness, far from the safety of civilization. But deep down, she couldn't shake the unsettling feeling that something was off. As dusk settled over the campsite, a sense of unease began to creep in. The fire crackled and popped, sending sparks flying into the darkening sky. The group laughed and told stories, their voices echoing through the forest. They roasted marshmallows, the smell of burning sugar filling the air, and for a moment, everything seemed normal. Then it happened. From deep within the woods came a sound, a voice. It was soft at first, almost like a whisper, but unmistakably clear. "Sarah." Sarah froze, the marshmallow skewer clutched tightly in her hand. Her heart skipped a beat. "Did you guys hear that?" she asked, her voice shaky. The others stopped talking and listened. A moment of silence passed before the voice came again, louder this time. "Sarah." Jake frowned, glancing around. "Very funny, whoever's trying to mess with us." But the voice didn't belong to any of them. It was hollow, ethereal, as if it were drifting on the wind. "Sarah." Her blood ran cold. The voice was calling her name, but it sounded distant, like it was coming from somewhere deep within the forest. The others exchanged uneasy glances, the laughter from earlier now forgotten. "Maybe it's someone else camping nearby," Lisa suggested, though her voice wavered. Jake stood up and grabbed a flashlight. "I'll check it out. It's probably just some pranksters." He motioned to Michael. "Come with me." The 2 boys ventured into the woods, their flashlight beams slicing through the darkness. As the minutes ticked by, the tension around the campfire grew thicker. Sarah's heart pounded in her chest. She strained her ears, trying to hear Jake and Michael, but there was only silence. After what felt like hours, Jake and Michael returned, their faces pale and serious. "There's no one out there," Jake said, his voice tight. We walked for at least 20 minutes, called out, but nothing. But the voice, Sarah started, but Jake cut her off. There's nothing out there, Sarah. Maybe it was the wind. Let's just get some sleep. Reluctantly, they retreated to their tents, but sleep didn't come easily. Sarah lay wide awake, her heart racing every time the wind rustled the leaves. Somewhere deep in the woods, she could have sworn she heard that voice again, faint and distant. Sarah. The group woke up feeling tense, the events of the previous night hanging over them like a dark cloud. Lisa complained of strange dreams where the trees seemed to be alive, whispering her name, trying to lure her into the forest. Michael admitted that he too had heard the voice again in the middle of the night, but he had been too scared to say anything. Sarah, though, had barely slept. Her mind raced with questions. Why was the voice calling her name? What did it want? Was there something watching them from the shadows? Determined to get answers, she suggested they explore the forest that day. Perhaps there was some explanation for the strange occurrences. As they trekked deeper into whispering pines, the forest seemed to close in around them. The trees were thick and gnarled, their branches twisting like skeletal fingers. The deeper they went, the darker it became, even though it was the middle of the day. Suddenly they stumbled upon an old, crumbling cabin hidden beneath the canopy of trees. It looked as though it hadn't been touched in years. Moss covered, the windows shattered, the door hanging off its hinges. A chill ran down Sarah's spine. This must be where the voice is coming from, Lisa whispered. Jake scoffed, but there was a nervous edge to his voice. It's just an old cabin, probably abandoned for decades. They approached cautiously, and when Sarah pushed open the door, it creaked ominously. Inside, the air was musty, filled with the smell of rotting wood. The walls were covered in strange symbols, some carved into the wood, others painted in a dark, dried substance that looked suspiciously like blood. Sarah felt her skin crawl as she approached one of the carvings. It was a name, her name. Before she could react, the temperature in the cabin plummeted. Their breaths came out in visible puffs. The voice returned, louder than ever, echoing through the cabin. Sarah. The group panicked, scrambling for the door, but it slammed shut with a deafening bang. The windows shattered, and an icy wind tore through the cabin, carrying with it the unmistakable sound of laughter. Twisted, mocking laughter. In the darkness, a figure appeared. Transparent at first, but slowly taking shape. It was a woman, her eyes hollow, her skin pale as death. Her mouth twisted into a cruel smile as she looked directly at Sarah. You shouldn't have come here, the ghost whispered, her voice now filled with venom. Sarah felt her knees buckle, the weight of the ghost's presence suffocating her. Why are you calling me? The ghost floated closer, her feet not touching the ground. Because you belong to the woods now. In a blind panic, the group fought their way out of the cabin, the ghost's laughter following them. They ran through the forest, the trees seeming to shift and twist around them, blocking their path. The voice continued to call Sarah's name, growing more desperate, more insistent. Sarah. 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 By the time they reached their campsite, it was nearly dark. They didn't stop to pack their things. They jumped into the car and sped away, leaving the eerie forest behind. But as the road twisted and turned beneath the moonlight, Sarah looked in the rearview mirror. In the distance, standing at the edge of the trees, was the ghost, watching them leave. And even though they were miles away, Sarah could still hear her voice, faint but clear. "You can't escape, Sarah. You belong to me." Weeks passed, and Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. Strange things started happening at home. Lights flickering, doors creaking open on their own, and most chilling of all, the faint sound of a voice calling her name in the dead of night. No matter how far she ran, she knew deep down that the ghost of the woods would never let her go. And that's it for tonight's story of the ghost in the woods. I hope you enjoyed this terrifying journey into the heart of the unknown. Remember, the forest may seem peaceful, but you never know what might be lurking in the shadows, watching, waiting. If you liked the story, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe to Beyond the Fear for more chilling tales. And don't forget to leave a comment below. What would you do if you heard your name being called from deep in the woods? Thanks for joining me. I'm Zishan, and until next time, sleep with one eye open.